Hello. I've taken a topic on which I'll probably do a series of videos. It's probably not the most tasteful topic, but I find it very pertinent at this day and age. So I'm going to be talking about dislike, more so about us developing dislikes, especially towards other people, and how to deal with the dislikes that we develop and try to keep it civil as well. So if you look at the dictionary, dislike is a feeling of distaste or hostility. Now, you would think that in this world, at this day and age, you will hear this word a lot. But strange enough, we don't seem to hear this a lot, and that's not for a good reason. The reason why I think I don't hear the word dislike much is because people have substituted that for an even stronger feeling. They use the word hate. Now, every time I hear my children use the word, I hate this or I hate that, and I remind them that hatred is a very strong feeling and try not to develop that, because you can see the hatred to be at the root of a lot of problems in the world. So one of the reasons I want to discuss this topic, like I said, it's not talked about enough. I think people need a lot of help to deal with their dislikes, because you could be disliking someone that you're working with, so you have to see them every day. It can get quite difficult as your feelings get more intense. You do have to turn up at work every day, but you have to see this person that you really dislike. So we don't talk enough about this. And another reason that I thought we should talk about this is because dislike is how hatred starts. You first develop this dislike towards people or thing or anything associated with it, and over time it evolves into hatred, and somehow we humans seem to just find it very convenient these days, and we're just evolving into beings that easily dislike or look at the negative, habitually find things to dislike. So we're just drifting away from each other due to our dislikes. So an incident that happened in my childhood comes to memory. I was in year 7, and based on what I recall of my childhood, and even based on how I am now, I must have been quite a dominant character, always bold and always full of confidence. And I used to enjoy, and this I definitely remember, I used to enjoy being the class leader. But in year 7, my teacher was just not keen to make me a class leader at all. And I always had this feeling that she didn't like me. I used to discuss this with my mother, or at least I must have discussed this with my mother, because that would have prompted her to go and talk to my class teacher to understand what was going on. And at that time, the teacher gave a feedback, which I wouldn't say was particularly useful. I wish it was a bit more useful than what she had said. But the feedback that she gave was that there is a lot of anti-Veena feeling among the students, and that is why she wouldn't select me as the class leader. At that time, it didn't really make much, or I didn't make much of it back then. But I certainly remember now that I felt sad and I did feel helpless about what I heard from my teacher. But in the last few years, when I've been reflecting on what she had said, I definitely see a failing on the teacher's side. And this video is not about finding fault with the teacher, but it is more about reflecting on how important it is to deal with feelings at a very young age. So I thought, what could the teacher have done differently? Now, firstly, if she had heard complaints from other pupils about my behavior towards them or my attitude towards them, which led them to think that there is some animosity maybe, she should have called both parties and talked to both of us and heard our stories. That didn't happen. Secondly, but importantly, as a teacher, she must have taught the children that developing such feelings or anti-X, anti-Y feelings are really unhealthy and how they could deal with that. Third, and equally important, she should have talked to me about how perhaps I can develop myself to be a more amicable person, maybe. Maybe there was something that I do, not even knowing, uh, realizing it, that was making people perceive me as someone that they wouldn't like. She didn't do any of these above. Instead, based on her action, she almost suggested that she agrees with them. Now, I could have just succumbed to that feedback and withdrawn myself and changed the person that I am. But luckily, I was quite confident to just pull through and be the person that I am. So I must have been about 12, year 7 is about 12 years old. And I think at that age, to have to deal with anti-Veena feelings amidst your classmates, who you will have to see every day, and we all knew that they don't change the classes, we just remain in the same class until at least until year 10. So to deal with that at 12 years of age, now that I have a child who's getting close to 12, I understand how little their comprehension is and how much help they need emotionally. So now it probably dawns on me that, wow, that teacher did not help at all. And then equally, my classmates, who would have also been 12 obviously, they wouldn't have known how to deal with the dislike that they have developed for me. So I feel it was a huge opportunity that has been missed. And ironically, because of all this, I do not like my year 7 teacher. But at least I have a rationale for not liking. How I dealt with my dislike is probably what my success story is about when it comes to dealing with dislikes. So dislike, if you look at it, is at the bottom of the big problems in this world. We face a lot of racism, and when we say racism, my own children have been subject to such feelings as well. We live in a country where it's obvious that we don't originate from here, and there are kids who grow up in this country with the belief that foreigners are bad, or they have to go back to their land. So there have been children that come up to my kids and say, you don't belong here, or you should be going back to where you came from, and so on. So somewhere a dislike grows and grows and grows and becomes hatred. Now we almost have a generation who are very privileged, and they have the things even before they imagined they needed it. Now, but imagine though, our grandparents who would have grown up in the wartime, they wouldn't have had the choice to say, I like this, or I like that, or I won't eat this food because I don't like it, and so on. Whereas the generation that we are bringing up, they have it all. It looks as if, with austerity being out of the way, the feeling of entitlement is ever increasing. And it just seems very easy to develop dislikes and equally likes as well. And if we didn't have social media and so on, maybe dislikes wouldn't be this public. But you can see that with freedom of speech ever growing, people are more expressive about their dislikes. And you might have heard how bad news spreads faster than good news. So these things spread faster and it gets blown out of proportion. There is a lot of neuroscience behind dislike as well. And I would like to be exploring those in the coming weeks or coming videos. What I'm trying to explore is, could we nip it at the bud? Could we deal with our dislikes in a more civil way without having to burn or bury our own emotions? I'm not suggesting that we should not feel any dislike towards anyone, because that's almost impossible. I could not get to that level of sanity. I will definitely have certain dislikes, but how I deal with them is probably the most important. It's not easy, and sometimes it's impossible to control how others feel about us. So I'm not going to be talking about how to make ourselves more amicable or more likable. I'm going to talk more about how to deal with our dislike towards other people. It's important to remember that reaction to an event usually is far more important than the event itself. So if we know we don't like a certain person and we come across them, and then one thing leads to another and we end up in a very ugly situation, that's something that we could have avoided if we had controlled our reaction. So in the coming videos, I'm going to explore the neuroscience behind dislikes and how we can possibly find ways to deal with our dislikes. Stay tuned. Thank you.